Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our final segment, Weather Forecast. Last week, we talked about the eventual end of the Catholic Church, an institution that has existed for generations, for centuries, and has oppressed many people, killed many of Yah's people. We're going to touch back on the Catholic Church because there's some historical context that I think give credence to the prophecies that we read in Revelations, those prophecies being that the Catholic Church clearly is the whore of Babylon, and really also there's a lot of thought that not just the whore of Babylon, but the Catholic Church also is the false prophet. Now, this is something that I don't definitively have an absolute, yes, this is the case, but there's some historical things that we could look to that could give us some idea of who the false prophet is or whether it is the Catholic Church. So first, let's just go back for review's sake to the scripture that we went through last week. It says, "Then one of the seven angels who had seven bowls came and spoke with me, saying, 'Come here, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who sits on many waters, in whom the kings of the earth committed acts of sexual immorality, and those who live on the earth became drunk with the wine of her sexual immorality.'" Emphasize, the kings of the earth became drunk on the wine of her sexual immorality. Many rulers, many monarchies, many presidents, many dictators all came to this same entity and basically engaged inside of sexually immoral acts with her. "And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman on a scarlet beast full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. We spoke last week about those 10 horns being 10 nations, particularly 10 nations that are predicted inside of the book of Ezra, the second book of Ezra. "The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet." Purple and scarlet, I didn't say this last week and I forgot, but that's another indication that this woman has to be the Vatican and Catholic Church because these are signature colors utilized by the Pope. "And adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls." Think about all of the riches that the Vatican, that the Catholic Church has taken in from raiding different countries in the world. Many riches. It's a very rich institution. If you go to the Vatican, you just see crazy amounts of money that has been plundered from them over the years. And going forward, it says, so the woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold, precious stones, and pearls, holding in her hand a cup full of abominations and of unclean things of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the woman of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses of Yeshua. When I heard her, I wondered greatly. And the angel said to me, 'Why do you wonder? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast that carries her, which has 7 heads and 10 horns.' He said, 'The waters which you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples and multitudes and nations.'" Clear indication that colonialism is a part of the legacy of this institution. "And the 10 horns which you saw and the beast these will hate the prostitute and will make her desolate and naked and will eat her flesh and will burn her up with fire. For Yah has put it in their hearts to execute his purpose by having a common purpose and by giving their kingdom to the beast until the words of God be fulfilled. The woman who you saw was the great city which reigns over the kings of the earth." So we're going to go to another scripture. That's Revelations 13. This is the scripture that talks about the false prophet. We're going to go with verse 1 through 28. And so let's start. "The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns, 7 heads," same beast, right? "Then the 10 crowns on the horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority." The dragon is Satan, Lucifer. "One of the heads of the beast seemed to have a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshiped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast and asked, 'Who is like the beast? Who can wage war with it?' The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies, to exercise its authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to blaspheme Yah and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. It was given power to wage war against Yah's holy people and conquer them. meaning this false prophet was given the authority to raise war with Yah's people. It was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All the inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world. Whoever has ears, let him hear. If anyone goes into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. The calls for patience and endurance and faithfulness on the part of Yah's people. Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all authority of the first beast on its behalf, and it made the earth and all its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. It performed great signs, even causing fire to come from the heaven and earth in full view of the people. Because of the signs, it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast. It deceived the inhabitants of the earth. It ordered them to set up an image of an honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand, on their forehead, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of men, 666. So this describes what many call the false prophet, the fact that there's another beast who's going to point the world to worship the beast, worship the image of the beast. Is this the Vatican? Many people have thought this is going to be the Catholic Church. I don't definitively, know. None of us definitively know with much prophecy. There's some that you can say, yeah, I have a pretty good idea. But it could also be that this is a figure that's going to draw all attention to the Antichrist. That's very much a possibility too. However, I do want to look through history about what has the Catholic Church relationship been to other rulers, because that might give us an indication as far as why this could be them if it is them. So we're going to talk about how Pope Pius, came to regret his deal, they say, with the Pope and Mussolini. So to give everyone an image, or to give everyone a frame of reference, the Pope had a very close relationship with Benito Mussolini. Mussolini was the dictator who took over Italy, who was a part of the axis of evil. That's the word that's given to the axis, which means Hitler, Mussolini, and also Japan. I'm not sure the name of the leader of Japan, but basically World War II, the Axis powers. And Mussolini specifically went into Africa. He was going to conquer East Africa in the name of his society. So it says, in his maiden speech to the Italian Parliament in 1921, Benito Mussolini had spoken of the historical importance of the Catholic Church. That's right, the murderous dictator Mussolini had a good admiration of the Catholic Church. When Mussolini became prime minister in October 1922, the new Pope Pius XI knew he had a politician with whom he could deal. By January 1923, Mussolini had held a secret meeting with the Cardinal Secretary of State and had agreed that the Jesuit Fra Pietro Tacci Venturi should serve as a direct personnel channel between the Pope and Mussolini. In this fast-paced and well-written historical narrative, David Ketzer tells the story of the relationship between Mussolini and the Vatican during the reign of Pope Pius XI, demonstrating the extent to which the Church acted as a pillar of the fascist regime, while the Pope frequently called on fascists to serve the moral, social, and religious interests of the Church. That's right, the Pope was trying to use the fascist governments to basically have leverage through the church. That's really what, or for the church. That's really what this relationship was about. So Mussolini granted favors to enhance the role of the church in Italy, while the Pope saw many advantages to be gained from the strong, sympathetic government in Rome. Neither Mussolini nor the Pope had any love for parliamentary democracy. I want to emphasize that again. Neither Mussolini nor the Pope had any love for parliamentary democracy. Both were willing to see the dissolution of the Popular Party as a vehicle for promoting Catholic interests, and could just as easily be served as from a direct link between the Pope and Mussolini. It was Italy's relationship with Germany that threatened a continuing relationship between Pius and Mussolini. When Hitler became German Chancellor in 1933, the Pope acted to secure a concordat with Nazi Germany, but when Hitler was found to be less accommodating than Mussolini, because the Nazis frequently and deliberately violated the concordat, that with a closer relationship between Germany and Italy after 1936, Pius feared that Italy might emulate Germany in persecuting the church and sought to warn the Italians against close links with Germany. Mussolini ignored the Pope's warning that a ban on racially mixed marriages was in violation of a concordat. The ailing Pius made a final gesture to secure Mussolini's attention. The Pope invited the bishop and cardinal to attend a celebration of the 10th anniversary of the Lateran Agreements on February 11th, 1939, when he planned to speak out against the fascist violation of the Concordat. The Pope died that day before the scheduled celebration, however. Pacelli took charge of the Vatican on the death of the Pope, destroyed the copies of the Pope's prepared speech, and returned a draft to the encyclical against racism to Lafarge. In March 1939, Pacelli was elected Pope, styling himself Pius XII as in defiance of his predecessor. He also moved to change the direction of the papacy by restoring good relations with the fascist regime, just as he took the initiative to improve relations with Hitler. What are some key attributes of the Catholic Church, of the Vatican specifically, that show you that they might have that role of false prophet? Well, they're trying to use this. Well, let's back up actually, because it's important to know this. When it comes to Mussolini, when it comes to Hitler, when it comes to these dictators, there are different people who will rise up in history who give the appearance of being that final Antichrist. There's a very interesting documentary on History Channel, in fact. So as this documentary breaks down, even Nostradamus, who was a mystic, said that he foresaw that there were going to be these three big figures who were going to be like an Antichrist. The first being Napoleon, and I think we'll talk about Napoleon next week, by the way. The other one being Mussolini, and the third one has yet, or not Mussolini, Hitler, and the third one has yet to appear. There are different times in history where the beast system thinks it's their time to rise, and so that time of World War II with Hitler was really taking over the whole world. Mussolini was really taking over his section of the world. Japan was really taking over their section of the world. I believe that those people who were at that time alive believed that this was their opportunity, this was their chance to seize power, that essentially Hitler was going to be the Antichrist. They believed that he was going to be the one. Because of that, you saw the institutions that supposedly hate Hitler now, right? All coming around him and trying to bargain, trying to make cozy, as they did with other leaders in the past. So as the scripture prophesies, there will be many Antichrist figures who arise throughout the world, throughout the generations. That doesn't mean that they're the Antichrist. I believe that the Pope thought that Hitler was going to be that end time leader. I think that they actually believed that, and that's why they were trying to negotiate and trying to have a good relationship with them. However, the Pope or Hitler basically pushed him off, but the later Pope was able to make more cozier with Hitler and also Mussolini again, right? But you see the same tug of war as far as trying to have good relations with the power that's going to be possibly the dictator of the entire world. That's a key indicator of the false prophet. So it is a possibility. I do definitely believe that that could be the false prophet. The only problem I see is that most people do have not too good of a view of the Pope today. It's not like back in the day where it's like, oh, everyone just loved the Pope. Now today, more people have some reasoning or question things and don't necessarily take the narrative that's given to them. But it doesn't mean that that's not going to change in the near future, because all you need is a quick change of action or something that's going to happen that's beyond your control. And all of a sudden, those figures who are supposed to be hated by you can all of a sudden become someone who you love. We've seen this happen many times throughout history. So what he was doing with Mussolini, who also could have been an Antichrist figure, was trying to cozy up to him, because this would be the person, if he were that end time figure, who he would have to have basically handed over power to, pointed people in his direction. This is the person who we've been waiting for. This is the person that's going to liberate us, who's going to free us from all tyranny, Mussolini or Hitler or whoever it would be. That's one indicator that I do think that the Catholic Church could definitely be the false prophet. But like I said, we don't know certain things for sure. I don't know if there's enough evidence to definitively say that. Just by the way, if you don't know, during World War II, the Catholic Church was doing something else that was very suspect. They were actually going into Ethiopia, they were using Mussolini to go into Ethiopia to take what we know is the Ark of the Covenant. I want to briefly read this to add more context onto its role inside of history. So we're going to scroll down some. Okay, so we have Italy. Considered Ethiopia to be in its sphere of influence. It was one of the few African countries which still preserved its independence and was free from Europe. Abyssinia was quickly overrun by Italy. The League of Nations issued their protest. It seemed that only the Vatican kept quiet while Mussolini was going into Italy. Some speculate that the Vatican blessed the Italian invasion of Abyssinia for its own reasons. One, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church called itself the original Christian faith, as did the Roman Catholics at the Vatican. Certainly, it didn't sit well with the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, who refused to accept the Pope as the supreme leader of the Christian faith. Pope Pius XI was careful not to personally endorse the Italian invasion on Abyssinia, but the political backlash from Catholics worldwide would be enough reason to not support the war publicly. But many people believe that Mussolini obtained Vatican support for the invasion. This was in part because it would allow the Vatican to submit the Ethiopian Orthodox Church to its will. Although Pope Pius XI was fairly quiet during Italy's occupation of Abyssinia, many other members of the Vatican were much more vocal. Archbishop Turano was quoted as saying, "The war against Ethiopia should be considered as a holy war, a crusade. Open Ethiopia, a country of infidels and schismatics, to the expansion of the Catholic faith." There's the search for the Ark. Ethiopia, with its long, rich history of Judaism and Christianity, claimed to possess the one artifact that most desired by all the major regions, the Ark of the Covenant. The Vatican was certainly aware of its claim. Some speculate that the Vatican, as the representative of Christianity, wanted the world's holiest artifact in its possession. So they say Christianity. This, too, put them at odds with the Ethiopian Church. The Ethiopian Church has long had a history of moving the Ark for safekeeping. After the residing of Lake Tana Islands for more than 800 years, it was eventually moved to Axum in 333. On multiple occasions, the Ark was under threat. Guardians once again returned it to Lake Tana. In some instances, it relocated to other areas such as Gondar, the caves of the Siman Mountains in Siwa, and the Ziwe Islands, and elsewhere. As expected, Ethiopian religious officials claimed the Ark was moved from Axum during the Italian occupation. To make matters even more confusing, the Amhara tradition also states that the exact copy of the Ark is in St. Mary's Zion Church, and the original Ark of the Covenant is in Ambese, the lion mine. On the other hand, the St. Mary Zion Church claims that they have the original. So this is some context, some interesting context, because if this is the case, it's very possible that the Vatican was trying to use Mussolini as a way to get the Ark of the Covenant, which gives more question to the idea of whether the Vatican is actively trying to play that role of the false prophet. Imagine if the Vatican had their hands on the Ark of the Covenant, how the whole world would be in awe. In fact, that reminds me of another topic that we won't get into today, but maybe in another day, of Bluebeam, Project Bluebeam. Imagine covering this great artifact, an end times artifact, and having it at the right time. But that just gives context that the Vatican was not in a vigilant position at the time when Mussolini was in Italy, and might have had ulterior motives. So like I said, next week I think we're going to look at one more historical example of them showing this behavior of cozying up to leaders. We're going to focus on Napoleon. But for now, I hope you all enjoyed this show. Please do remember to subscribe on Telegram. If you have not already, just click the link down below. And I hope to see you all next week.